When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Join Up Dots. How are you? Are you all right? Are you all ready for a rumbling conversation that can go in any direction as I reach my hands round the world metaphorically and give a love hug to every single person out there who's waiting to kickstart their life and do something amazing? And today's guest, he's done so many amazing things, and I think he would quite like a love hug with a middle-aged, slightly greying UK podcaster. He's okay. He's all right with his sexuality. He won't mind that. But let's bring him on the show anyway, because he's been on the show before, and he's so inspiring in so many ways. It's a shock that he hasn't been on again until now. He's a professional speaker and record-breaking businessman who focuses in on business mastery and also has the "come on, you guys, you can do the impossible. You just have to start taking action" vibe nailed down too. Now, it can help us all get the champion mindset and build the strength and courage to tackle the impossible head on. But his life didn't start in such a positive way, as at a 14-year-old he was hit head on by a drunk driver while riding his bicycle, and a neurosurgeon said if he survives the night, he probably said it softly, he'll be a vegetable for the rest of his life. And certainly the diagnosis looked accurate, as he was in a coma for 4 days, in casts and rehabilitation for a year, and suffered problematic effects lasting many years. And after the accident, life was a cycle of ups and downs until he learned the tools and strategies he teaches today. Now, he started his professional career as a carpenter and excelled with woodcraft, and then created his first business at age 24 when he entered into the residential contracting and real estate investment business. But it wasn't until after a divorce, while still a young man, did his life really start to find traction, and he began to fire sparks across the world. In 2011, he decided he wanted to do something amazing, and he wanted to make a difference. He wanted to leave his mark. So from a casual runner, in just 9 months, he went to running 2,621 miles across America, joining the ranks of the most elite ultra runners in the world. And for 100 consecutive days, he ran a marathon distance and then gave an inspirational keynote speech to at-risk groups and donated 10,000 of his books, Dream Big, Act Big, to the audiences he met. And he ran into New York City waving a huge American flag, surrounded by hundreds of runners, and entered the record books. And since then, he's continued to provide inspiration to everyone that he meets, undertaking many challenges that so many people would look at as daunting and undoable. So what is it about the world today that he sees the challenge too big to even start taking action? Why do people just hold themselves back? And was there a moment when he realised that he had the mental strength to tackle anything? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Kroys Saver. Good morning, Kroy. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Holy cow, that was the best introduction I have ever got, hands down, anywhere in the world. I'm going to travel with you. I'm going to take you everywhere I go from now on.
Well, you can do that as long as we don't have to run. If you can drag a little sort of like a baby stroller behind you so I can just sit in it and watch you sweat. Because, to be honest, Kroy, there's certain things. I've been looking at a lot of your work this week. And if you're interested in the lead up to Kroy's story, everybody, you can go over to episode 245 of Join Up Dots and you can find it. And there's, as we said in the introduction, there is a lot of madness. There's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of, I don't think I could do that. But just recently, you've been doing some extra stuff. But I really think, why, Kroy? Why are you testing yourself so much? So tell us what you've been doing and tell us why you want to do these things.
Most recently, I've gone a different direction than running. It's still going around America, but except I'm couchsurfing and I'm fully nomadic now. All my stuff's in storage. I don't have an apartment. I don't have a house, nothing. And I'm just traveling wherever I feel like traveling at the moment. I've been around Latin America a little bit, and this coming year, I'll probably be going even farther this winter. So the funny thing is that when I decided to do this had this idea of just like run across America or the world record in Death Valley, I get these ideas, and what do all my friends say? They say, you're crazy, it's stupid, it's nuts, or I would never do that. I've had my best friends telling me like, oh yeah, I think it's cool, but I'd never do that, and I think what you're doing is wrong, but it's cool that you're doing it. So there's always going to be opposition when you're doing something outside of the norm. And that's one of the biggest challenges. You mentioned, why aren't people stepping up? And my words, awards for it, but why aren't people stepping up and doing amazing things? And that's one of the reasons, is because we worry about what other people say. If you can get past that, you'll be halfway to some amazing things.
It is funny how life operates, because just before we pressed record, I was chatting and I said, you're going to be episode like 972. And you went, wow, that's amazing. And I kind of think, is it? It's just, one step after another. It's one show after another until something occurs. Is that how your life is really? When you look at everything, we see the end product, but is it just one step after another?
Well, it's exactly that. And it's one step after the other. And just like my run across America, while it was 2,600 some miles, it wasn't even one day, a marathon distance a day. It wasn't even 1 mile at a time. It was one step at a time, and one step after the other, roughly 1 million strides. And that's how I got across America. So it wasn't like I did it in one moment. It was over 100 days. And to get to that point, it was another 9+ months to train for that. So it wasn't just that one moment. It was the one moment after moment after moment. So like one podcast after the other. And your first ones probably weren't remotely as good as they are now. It's part of the learning curve. Just like my body, when I started running, I was a terrible runner, and I'm still not a gifted, amazing runner. I'm efficient enough. I've done what I can with this body. I'm too bulky to be a great runner. I'll never win a marathon speed. I'll never break 3 hours on a marathon, not even close. But I've done what I can with this body, with this life, to become an efficient runner. And I'm doing that in business now. And that's what it is. It's not about being the best. It's about being the best version of yourself.
How dare you? I nearly jumped in there. Are you saying that my early episodes were not as good as today's? Was I not the fully formed podcaster as soon as I turned on the microphone? No, of course I wasn't. And that's actually one of the things I love about podcasting, that you can go back. If you've got the inspiration to do it, as you've got now, because you've got your first foray into it, a wonderful show that I've been listening to this morning, which we'll talk about later. But you can go and you can listen to the very first episodes that people record. And that's got to be, I think that's hugely inspirational, that history can be found and it's out there, because so often we just see the highlights, don't we? We just see the kind of where they are now, and the getting there is kind of wiped out of the history book somehow. We almost feel that they're fully realized legends who can do these amazing things.
It's kind of like any musician that you think of, any person that you love that sings. And if you go back to the Beatles, they sang in dodgy bars for years and years and years, and they were completely undiscovered until all of a sudden they became an overnight success. Well, there's no such thing as overnight success. There's success that happens behind the scenes in these tiny little bars and these tiny little speaking engagements and these tiny little jobs, whatever it is, an artist sitting in a room drawing for years before anybody discovers them. It happens over time, and you get better and better and better. So if you look back to some of my early speaking engagements, because I'm a professional speaker now, I get hired by corporations and go in and inspire their troops. If you go back to my earliest speaking engagements, which I have them on video, they are brutally bad. Not even like somewhat good. They are brutally, brutally bad. And they got better and better and better and better. And eventually they got kind of good, and then they got good, and then they got great, and then eventually they became excellent. So it's a process. It's always a process, and everybody forgets that.
If you go onto YouTube, I was watching this last night. There's a guy, and I think his name's Evan Carmichael from memory, and he does the 10 steps to success from a certain person, and you can find Oprah's 10 steps, and he kind of takes interviews and he takes these kind of sound bites out. And then I was listening to Paul McCartney last night, and it was a very interesting one, and they were talking to him when he must have been about 22. It was black and white. It was the Beatles, and they said to him, did you have a plan? And he said, no, we were just trying to do it in stages. And they said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, the first thing was we wanted to buy our own instruments, get our own instruments. Well, oh, we've done that. Then we've got to learn how to play. Oh, we've got that. Oh, well, then we want to play in a bar. Then we want to play in a club. He said everything was just one step ahead. And in his head, it was hugely doable. Now he looks back on the Beatles and he thinks, oh my God, that it was amazing what we achieved. But everything was just one step. And people can do that, can't they? They can do one step. They've just got to be aware that it's going to take, a while to get up to speed until you're being noticed, I suppose.
And you're touching on something super important. And if you were to take success and boil it down into just two simple steps, or two simple concepts anyway, it's the first part is to have the courage to actually go after your dreams, to take that initial action and to be able to step beyond your comfort zone. And that's what paralyzes a lot of people. But then a lot of people also have that courage to start it, but they don't follow through. They don't sing in the bars for years to be able to become very good. They don't sit in a corner in their room all by themselves to draw over and over and over to be able to become a great artist, or any version of that. Steve Jobs didn't become Steve Jobs overnight. He went through evolutions of his life, and right up until the very end, he was still going through evolutions to become the next version. And so that's what happens in life. You have to first have the initiative to start and step beyond what we talked about in the very beginning, where people say, no, you can't do it. And then you have to follow through while people are still telling you, why don't you get a job? My parents still tell me, why don't you get a regular job? Because my income isn't totally stable. I get big money from here and there, and then sometimes I don't have anything for a little while. That's the nature of being an entrepreneur sometimes, until you get smart enough, which is what I'm doing now, till you get smart enough to build up a consistent, persistent income source. But you have to go there. The Beatles were broke forever, and most singers were broke until they one day weren't.
My parents, I was talking to them the other day, and my mum was saying something, and she said, oh yes, it'd be nice once you're a success. And I said, well, what are you aiming for then? I'm already a success. I've got a top show. It pays all my bills. I'm fully funded by podcasting, which doesn't happen very often. Many podcasters don't earn any money from it at all. I said, I'm a success. Well, yeah, but you need people working for you. Do you? Mum? What is that a benchmark of success, that I need people working for me? I just couldn't understand it. But when you look at what you've done, is your dream starting to be realised? You start something and you think, oh, I want to do this. And then little by little opportunities come to you. And then you start to think, oh, okay, yeah, I can see where I'm going. Have you got a bigger vision of where you're aiming now, Kroy, where at the beginning it was just to do these tasks and these challenges?
It keeps evolving as I've gone through this world of author, speaker, expert, that sort of thing. It's a strange world, actually. And through the process of it, I thought I wanted to be like this, and then I thought I want to be like this, and I've evolved, and I'm realizing who I want to be. And the closer I get to it, the closer I realize of what I actually want. I wanted to be a Tony Robbins.
Oh, you want to be? Sorry, I jumped in. Like a Tony Robbins, and have the big stages like he does and inspire people like that. And then I realized that's not exactly who I am. It's not congruent with who I am. While I love it and I go to his events, it's not like that. I'm more towards a Wayne Dyer or a Les Brown, and more of the spiritual side of things, more of the inspirational side of things. And so that's the direction I want to go: an author, speaker, expert, and to be like Wayne Dyer, where he passed and the world mourns for him because he's impacted so many lives. It's not so much that I want to be missed. That doesn't really matter, but it's the idea that I can make a difference in other people's lives. And that takes time. And the funny thing is too, and I got to remind myself all the time, because I always have this vision, I want to be this, and I want to be this big. I want to be this, my name in lights, if you will. But I got to remind myself, just yesterday, I got another note from someone I haven't heard from in years saying, I'm doing this because you spoke to me a few years ago. Yeah. And then I get them all the time. And it's little things sometimes, it's little differences. But what I think is a little difference to someone else, it is the world to them. And we got to remember that. And that's not just for you and me being, on the podcasting and on the stage and stuff like that. That's for anybody. It's the little league coach. It's the teacher. It's the parent. It's the uncle. It's everybody can have that kind of a difference in someone's life. I get emails quite often, and a guy sent me an email the other day, and he's just basically started his first company. So normally I will have people who have got a track record, but he had such a persuasive request to come on the show and a back history. This is you, Paul. If you're listening to yourself, we're going to be recording next week. But I thought to myself, wouldn't it be fantastic to get somebody on that hasn't actually kind of got going, but they're just at that moment when they're listening podcasts and they're reading books and they're thinking to themselves, I could try something. So he's coming on, and I get a lot of those emails where you can hear people are just kind of there or thereabouts, but they don't know what direction they want to go. They just know that they need more than what they're getting. Can you kind of understand that? And how do you explain to people that actually you're not going to know what you want? You've just got to start doing something at the beginning. How do you go back to them and give them advice that, quite frankly, will support them and not screw up their lives, Kroy?
One of my favorite quotes is from Martin Luther King. He said, "You do not have to see the whole staircase to take the first step."
Yeah.
The extension of that quote is you take the first step and the next step will be revealed. That's everybody's life is that's how you get started is you take the first step, and that step may bring you to your ultimate goal, or it may just bring you to what will bring you to your ultimate goal. It's not a linear straight path. Success is a zigzag, crazy, swirling thing. You go forward, you go backwards, you go sideways, up, down. It's everything. That's life. And if you can embrace that idea that life can be messy and success can be messy and relationships and everything else in life, if you can embrace the idea that sometimes it will be a mess, but in your biggest mess, you'll have your biggest breakthroughs, as long as you're willing to keep looking for that success, looking for the lesson in that and moving forward. So make sure you are moving forward towards a particular goal, but be flexible on how you get there. Know what you want, but be flexible on the path that you go there, and then you'll succeed. And because here's the thing, it's cliche. It's terribly, terribly cliche, but it's the success is in the journey. And that's really what it is, because every time I've accomplished something great, at the end of it, I'm like, man, now what? It's anticlimactic. I finished running across America. Yeah, it's great for like 3 days. Yeah. And then after that, it's you're sitting at home in your office again, and nobody's here. There's no media yelling at you and screaming to come on their show in that moment, and then there's no fans right there. And you're sitting in your office, and I'm still a guy sitting in jeans and behind a laptop. And it's like, now what? So the journey is what's amazing about life, and the success, the accolades, that's just the added benefit. That's not the purpose.
That is a weird feeling that you're talking about, because I know that 100%. I know that when I used to stand up and do these presentations in London, and I was really in the moment, and then afterwards I almost felt like I was depressed. It was just like a big come down. And I've spoken to loads of people, and it's like losing your virginity. You really build up and you think to yourself, oh, I can't wait to do this. This is going to be brilliant. It's going to be amazing. And then somebody in a charitable moment allows you to lose your virginity with them, and you think this is going to be brilliant, and then afterwards you're kind of just a bit flat, and you think, oh, don't know if I did it well enough, or was that good enough, or and I'll be all right next week, but then it doesn't happen for 2 years, and you're just in a big sort of slump. But that is life, isn't it? It is such the peaks and troughs, but those high moments, it's almost like a drug in your life. You've got to have a down, haven't you? You just can't keep on going up all the time.
You got to have your ups and downs, because how would you know your highs if you weren't low? How would you know light if you didn't know dark? I mean, these things are all necessary, and it's terrible sometimes. If death of a loved one, breaking up of a relationship, or ending of a marriage, a kid's going off to college, and now all of a sudden you're an empty nester. We have all of these things in life that are lows, if you want to call them that. But if you embrace the idea that they're just experiences. And here's a super important thing to learn is that there is no meaning to anything in life. I learned this back in college, and I've learned it many, many times over through the books and experts that I've been around. But there's no meaning to anything in life. The only meaning is what you attach to it. So my brother died when he was 44 years old. Is that a bad thing? It's a thing. It happened. But it's bad for my parents. They feel terrible over it, and they still do many years later. But I have a different view of life and death, so it doesn't affect me nearly as much. Loss of a job, is it a good thing or a bad thing? For some people, it's a terrible thing. But for other things, that leads them to a new job, or it leads them to living in a new place, or it leads them to starting a new business. So that bad thing can become the good thing. So good thing comes out of everything, but you've got to be willing to look for it. Otherwise, you're always going to be sulking in the sorrow of what happened.
So let's talk about this couch surfing. I'm trying to get away from my losing the virginity. I don't know what made me start talking about that, but those 5 ladies, they're still grateful. They're still grateful, Kroy. I must have done a good job. So couch surfing, you've got a house, you've got a life. It's all sort of comfortable and stuff. Couch surfing at your age, at my age, I can't think of anything worse. I don't even like going in a crappy hotel where the clicker doesn't work and, the hot water's not very good. That's a bit rubbish, isn't it, couch surfing? What do you get from it?
It's interesting because when I started traveling and speaking around the world, going for corporations and doing all the things that I did, I'd stay in a hotel, and sometimes you go to events where there would be many people and they want to share a room with you, and I'd never share a room with me. I'd always pay it. I even would go on a cruise every year, and I'd pay both sides of the cruise so I could have the cabin to myself. So it would, instead of $2,500, it'd be 5,000 American dollars to be able to go there, because I didn't want to share a room with anybody. And then eventually I did, for whatever reasons, I ended, and I was like, wow, this actually isn't so bad. And then when I decided to couch surf, the first few places I was at, because some of them were strangers, I didn't really know them. I knew of them, or we had spoken once or twice, but some of them were basically strangers. And once I got through a few houses, I realized, well, this is actually quite amazing, because they're so welcoming, so loving. They want to hear my stories, and they want to share their stories. And we talk over dinner, sometimes over a glass of wine, and you get to meet amazing people, and you get to see how other people live. And I was roughly 100 days that I couch surfed across America and Latin America a little bit. So I probably stayed at about 35 people, maybe 40 people's houses. And something I discovered with people is that we are all so much alike. We all have the same desires, and we all have the same challenges. There are different versions of desires. There are different versions of challenges, but we all have them. Everybody's in some sort of a challenge always. It may be small, it may be big, but everybody's in something. It's financial challenge, it's relationship challenge, it's a change of life, a new phase of life, going from working to retirement, or going from college. Because I stay with some young guys too, going from right out of college and now working for the first time in your life. That's a big change, if you remember that. So everybody's got some sort of a challenge. They're struggling in a little way or a really, really big way. And the most interesting thing is, one of my friends, a really dear friend of mine, who's in the most financial struggle of anybody I stayed with, he's about as broke as you get. He taught me one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Everybody has so much value, but you've got to be able to see that. And if you're not willing to open your eyes to that, you're missing half of the brilliance of life.
Well, I got 2 words to say to you, sir. Serial killers. Did you not think once... Because a serial killer is going to be really welcoming. I bet they're going to come in, we'll open a couple of pints of whatever, Did you not ever sort of be in that situation? Out of those 35, without giving names, because they're not going to listen to this anyway, how many of them did you actually go, actually, they're a bit weird. These people are freaks. I can't wait to get out of this one.
There was only one that I couldn't wait to get out of. There was only one. And it's a unique story in itself, but we'll leave the details to that so I don't incriminate anybody. But let's just say these people were supposedly enlightened, and they were the least enlightened people I think I've ever met.
Well, let's play some words now, and then we'll do a director's cut. I'll get that story out of him. I promise you, I will get that story out of him. Here's the words from Jim Carrey. He said these a few years ago, and we play them literally on every show. Let's hear them again. So how much of your life do you actually love? Following those words, how much of it do you go, this is bloody amazing, I really love this, against, actually, this is grind? There's a vast amount of just grind and rubbishness to get to these amazing bits.
Well, first, I absolutely love that clip from him. I listen to it pretty regularly because it's so true. You can fail at something you don't love, so you might as well try to do something you do love. And I used to be an EMT. For 6 years, I was an EMT volunteer, but I put a ton of time in, almost as much as a professional. Very, very, very dedicated for 6 years, firefighter and EMT. And we would sit around, and I still had a day job and everything else. But when I would go to the firehouse and we'd sit around waiting for a call, there was a lot of moments that nothing happened. There was absolute boredom. And then all of a sudden, there was that chaos and adrenaline of being on the call and helping someone, either a fire call or EMS call, doesn't matter, and go out and, on the ambulance and help somebody. And that's kind of what life is. People look at my life and my friends who are also speakers are doing some amazing things, really, really, high level, high end stuff, like movie star-ish kind of like things. And they look at that life and they think, wow, that's glamorous. Wow, that's amazing. I wish my life was more like yours. I wish I traveled like you do. And that's exciting. Absolutely, no doubt. It's brilliant. It's amazing. And I love every single second of it. Even going through the airports. I even love that. I know a lot of my friends travel and they go through the airports. Oh, I hate this. I got to go through Newark, Newark or LaGuardia, whatever. But I love every moment of that. I've learned to embrace even the mundaneness and that. But that's that part of my life. There are other parts of my life that they're boring. It's incredibly, incredibly boring. I sit writing on a laptop. That is not exciting. What comes out of it when the next book comes out, that's the moment of brilliance. But the sitting for hours and hours and hours and typing, or as we talked about before, I'm creating a podcast for the first time. I finally got the courage to create a podcast. And the first episode took me 5 or 6 tries, and I threw it all out before I got one that even worked well enough. And as we talked about offline, I still got a lot of improving to go, obviously. So how much of it do I like? Wow. I love being around my kids. That is absolutely fantastic when I'm around them. Single dad now, so I don't get to spend as much time as I'd like to, but when I am, that is brilliant, amazing. Traveling, speaking, being around people like that is amazing. But they're the business side of it. Yeah, some of it I don't. So I'd say 70% I love and 30% is boring, mundane, or just downright I don't like it. And I'm working on making that better. As Steve Jobs said, if I'm someplace for too many days in a row that I realize I'm waking up and regretting where I am or not liking where I am, he says that's when it's time to make a change. So I'm always looking, how do I make my life just a little bit better?
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I went through hell with Join Up Dots in the early days, and it literally killed me. I got it under control. I got it to a point now that I literally only do it like 2 days a month. It's very small amount. I don't know what to fill up my time with. When I set off on this journey, it was all about having freedom and the ability to do things on my own terms. And I'm not a TV watcher. I very rarely watch Netflix or anything. And I get bored, and so I come back and work. I just seem to work because I don't know what to fill up my time with. What do I need to do, Kroy? What can I do? What can I do to inspire myself that is going to be fun? Because every bit of fun after a while gets boring too, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it can. It certainly can, and it depends on the individual personality. So for me, I like to travel. I love to travel, but I can't travel 100% of the time. And I have a few friends that do that. They're on the road 340, 50 days of the year, and they're in a new hotel room every couple nights. I love to travel. I don't want to be a road warrior like that. So I need a combination of being on the road and then not being on the road for a while. I'm an introvert extrovert. I need quiet time. I need time with other people. So that's what inspires me. But I also get inspired by finding new things. And it's okay if you go do something fun, you get bored with it after a month or two. Go find something else. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're a creative person, you're always looking for something new, do that. It's the same thing with if you don't know what your purpose is, your purpose is to find your purpose. And the way a lot of people find their purpose is they go out and try new things constantly. So you may be at a job and you want to get out of your job, get rid of the job. You want to fire your job. You may want to fire your job, but you don't know how yet. You don't know what you want to do. I hear this question all the time. I hate my job, but I don't know what I want to do. So go out and do anything and everything in your free time. Figure out what you do love. Figure out what you hate. Don't do the things you hate, and find the things you love and do more of that. And then once you figure out what you love, then figure out how you can make a living doing that. And that may be getting a job in that career, or it may be going out onto your own business. I'm not a fan. I used to tell everybody they had to have their own business. And then I realized that not everybody's built for that. So if you're not built for that, you're more of a certainty-based person, go find a job in a career that you love. And if you don't have any experience in that now, go volunteer, go intern, go back to school and get your experience that you need to go do that. Whatever it is, it may take 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, but then you get to spend the rest of your life doing something you love and making a living at it. Isn't that worth it? Yeah. It's worth it to me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think I used to be a missionary for the entrepreneur world, and I used to say, you control your time, you control your money. And I agree with you. Sometimes I look back on corporate life and I think, it would have been so much easier just sort of staying there, and I think there's a lot of people that haven't got that ability to hustle. They haven't got that ability to just push on when there's no rewards coming their way. And I think they haven't got that ability to reach out and ask for help. And I put my hand up. I'm the world's worst person for reaching out and saying, I need help on this. But when I have, it's sped me forward, and the people that I've reached out to have been so inspirationally helpful for me. It's really been a springboard to where I am now. Do you find the same with yourself? Are you reluctant to reach out? Because once you get a certain amount of success behind you, people kind of think that you know everything, you know all the answers, but you only know the answers of what you've got up to, and there's a new comfort zone you've got to get out to for the next step. Are you a reacher out?
I used to not be. I used to be harshly and wildly independent. I can do it myself. I'll figure it out. And I hustled and I grind, and that's how I succeeded. My idea, my philosophy of business when I was younger was just grab the bull by the horns and go for a ride, and you'll figure it out along the way. And that works for a while. That works when you're younger. It works when you have that drive, and it works until you get enough experience and you start realizing that this starts to suck and you have to start changing things. So now I'm much of the opposite. I'm really quick to call out. My life has brought me a truly amazing set of friends from around the world that are wildly successful in different ways. And so I call people up. So just the other day, in fact, and be a little bit open and vulnerable here, if you will, I'm having a little bit of struggle in part of my business, and I've been trying to figure it out for a couple of years now, and it's just getting worse and worse, and I can't figure out this one piece of it, and it's driving me crazy. And it's for automated cash flow. I want to be able to have more freedom than I do now, financially. And so finally, the other night, I called up my friend and I told him, because he's built many multi-million-dollar companies, and I called him up and I said, Tom, I need help. I'm stuck. I can't figure this out. I've been struggling. He knows I've been struggling. He's been watching me from a distance, and I was like, I need you to coach me. I need you to show me what I'm doing wrong. I need you to help me stay on track with the things that matter so I get the results that I'm after. And I know there's a lot of things I don't know and you do. So will you please help me? So every day we get on a call now, 10, 15 minutes, what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, and it keeps me on track. And in just the week, I've accomplished more in the past week than I've probably accomplished in the past several months.
It's strange that though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I find that strange. I understand it, but I also find it strange that you're somebody that can go, right, I want to run across America. I want to go through Death Valley. I want to do all these things. It's just step after step after step. But then on things like automation and sales funnels and this kind of back end of business, you're not doing that step after step after step. Is that because the upskilling was the problem on that? It wasn't just a function of doing something physical. It was actually comprehending how these things work.
It's a little bit of two things. It's that, absolutely. There's the knowledge you got to have, which now at this point I do, because I've been dabbling and working in this and studying it for years. So I have that. I can do it. I know how to use the back-end Infusionsoft and the funnels, and I know how to do that. But the two challenges that I have, or which is what most people have, it's not the how. You'll figure out the how. It's the why. You've got to figure out what's going on in your head. So I know that it's all my internal mind game. So for me, I grew up in a very physical world. My dad was a carpenter, my brothers, my uncles, everybody worked with their hands. And so I grew up with this hard work makes success mentality. And so that's what I've been doing with the Run Across America, the world record running through Death Valley. Very physical things, very easy for me. I can go out. In fact, right now I could go out and I can go back into carpentry and I could build a house. I could hustle and I could work for 16 hours a day, and that would feel like home to me because that's easy for me. That's the way I'm designed. That's the way my DNA probably is. And it's also my experiences of life, nature versus nurture. So both my nature and my nurture has built me that way. So now I'm trying to do a very intellectual thing. And so I have some demons around that, if you will. It's a metaphor, of course. So I have some demons around that. Is my product good enough? So I'm creating this new podcast. Is it good enough? No, it wasn't good enough. And I've tried it. Not only this time, but I've tried it a couple dozen times in the past, and I never launched it because I was never happy enough, because I didn't believe it was good enough, because it was all mindset, the trash going on in our head saying that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough. You go through a divorce and you leave them, and some people will never date again because they'll have that I'm not good enough mentality. I'll never find somebody like that again. That person was my everything. And so we tell ourselves these crazy, stupid, ridiculous stories, and we believe them. And so what happens? We manifest past it, and it's true and it stays true. So that's why I reached out to my friend Tom, is because I need to get past that. And part of that is just somebody smacking me in the back of the head with a 2x4 saying, dude, stay on track. You can do this. You're forgetting this, and just do it. And so we all need a coach or a help of some sort. So yeah, I'm happy to reach out to somebody at this point. In the past, I wouldn't have, and I struggled always. And so now I'll get past that.
So in your life, you've created this business that has spun off from these physical tasks. Now, I'm very aware that certain people are brilliant in certain environments and other people are rubbish in other ones. I'm very good when I turn on the microphone and start talking. It's just a kind of talent that I've nurtured over a long time ago. But putting up a shelf, bloody hate putting up shelves. Just because I'm a man, it doesn't mean that I can drill into walls and stuff, but my wife seems to think I can. Now, is a sort of physical activity, is it really difficult to turn into a business? Because I would imagine it is, because you're doing it, but then you think, well, how do I monetize the fact that I'm doing this? Do I coach other people? Do I do group sessions? What was your first thought? You're going to do this run across America. Did you think about money at all, or was it just doing it?
It was more just doing it, but it was also, at a business side of it, was to get me the notoriety that I was looking for to get on stages. I was speaking at that time, but I wasn't really making any money prior to Run Across America, not much anyway. And so I was looking to get to the next level, and I ran across America. I got me on the news and all the other stuff. And I eventually started to get some speaking gigs. And so I went from making nothing, and this is over a course of several years. I went from making nothing to $2,500 for an hour talk to $13,500 a talk. And that was basically in those 3 steps. But there was a lot of time in between that I was making almost nothing to get to that point. I was still in the grungy bars like the Beatles, speaking for nothing and doing these tiny little gigs where I'd make a couple $100s here and there. And I was still doing that until eventually the right set of circumstances came along, and it went from 2,500 to, well, actually it wasn't quite 13,000. It was 25 to 75 to 10 to 13. But they happened like that. But it was only because I was willing to be in the grungy bars for all that time, metaphorically speaking, of course, willing to be in those grungy bars like the Beatles to be able to get to that point. And so is it to go from a physical life to a, that world to this world? It's been very difficult for me. Very, very, very difficult. And I'm still struggling in some ways, like we talked about a minute ago. But I know what I want. I know where I'm going to be eventually. I'd like to be there tomorrow, of course, but I'm not there, and I'm going to stick with this until I get there. I won't give up. I'd rather die trying than to not have tried at all, much like Jim Carrey talked about.
So for somebody out there listening to us, and they could be in Scandinavia, they could be in England, they could be Australia, wherever they are in the world, and they're listening to you and thinking, I love this, I love the thought about, I like running, but I've never tested myself up this much. Is it something that you would go, yeah, go for it, it's been great for me? Or would you say, seriously consider how it can affect not just you mentally, but your family and the life? Because there's a certain amount of transition, isn't it? When you step away from your peer group and you do something amazing, you've got to be aware that you're going to lose a lot of what you've got. Is it something that's worth taking a risk on?
Well, that's interesting language that you use there, is if you're going to lose something when you start moving forward. So that's one way to look at it, and that's a mentality that is very common. Or you could look at it as that I'm going to gain this. So if you're looking in your rearview mirror, then yeah, you're going to lose things. But if you're looking forward, it's everything you're going to gain. And in that process, absolutely. I don't have friends that I used to have friends before. Now, if I look back at it, for most of them, thank God I don't have those friends anymore. Yeah. But back then, they were my best buddies. And now I look back at them, I was like, and they still haven't gone anywhere. They're still the exact same thing, the exact same struggles. They haven't done anything, that I find very interesting with life. They're just living they're repeating the same day over and over and over as if it's, that like a movie. You just repeat the same thing and nothing really changes. So I could look back and say, yeah, I miss those friends. I do have a couple friends I do miss, but we just grew apart. I've been married twice, and both marriages, we grew apart in their differences, and I can feel bad for that, or I can look forward to what's going on next. We have that choice. So is it going to be a little bit hard? Is it going to be a little bit of transition? Yeah, certainly that's life, but you got to focus on where you're going. It's like driving at night. If you drive at night, dark road. In fact, the last 2 mornings ago, I couldn't sleep, so I got up at 5 a.m. I went for a run. It was pitch black. It was cloudy. It was overcast. There wasn't any moonlight, and it was dark, and there's no street lights around me. So it was as dark as you get. And so I didn't have my flashlight or anything ready, so I only took my phone with its tiny little flashlight, and I can only see 7 or 8 feet in front of me. But that's enough for me to take 3 or 4 strides without hitting anything, without tripping or falling. I don't need to see the next mile or 10 miles ahead of me. I only need to see the next few feet. And if I keep moving forward as far as my light would allow me to see, eventually I'll get where I need to go.
And do you need friends? Because I've moved from a place where I actually don't have any friends, really. My wife keeps on saying to me, "Oh, you should phone so-and-so up and have a beer." And I think, it's been 3 years now. Do I really want to do that? I seem to have more virtual friends that I don't actually meet more than actual connections. Did you need that in your life? Or with the way that the internet works and online world, is it perfectly acceptable to replace the people that could anchor you to your last position with people that you don't actually see?
That's interesting. The world is changing very much, and we get the endorphins and I'm forgetting the name of the chemical that makes, like, when you take cocaine, you get this chemical reaction. We get that from Facebook. We get that from text messaging, Instagram, whatever else. We can get these pseudo relationships and get the same chemical reactions in our body that we would get from a real friendship, but they're not completely real. So I don't have any local friends where my kids live in Connecticut, where I come visit, where my friends in my life used to be. I don't have any friends here, not personal friends like that. I have people I'm friendly with. Sometimes I'll go running with a couple of people. I might even occasionally grab a drink with somebody, but they're not friends. My friends are around the world, so when I go see them in California and Las Vegas, wherever, that's when we get together, and that's super important. So I can't hang out with people I used to hang out with because I don't think like them anymore, and they don't think like me anymore. So my friends have to be people who are unique to the world, the way I see the world currently. And so what we were talking about a minute ago, you start moving forward, and the things that you were a part of once, they won't be a part of what you are now. So you have to find the new friends. So if you're not wanting to go out with friends, you might just need different people that you'll crave to hang out with. And you live in a great city, so I'm sure there's a lot of people. In fact, I got a bunch of good friends in London. So it's just a matter of that. It's a matter of, do you need it? No, it just depends on your personality. I'm a very social, outgoing person for the most part, very extroverted for the most part. I need it. I absolutely need the interactions, whether it's online or physical. I totally need it, but not everybody does.
No, it's weird with me because I don't need it at all. I'm a very quiet person, and then I turn on the microphone, I turn on the webcam and stuff, and then I blaze big, and it's like I've stored up all my personality to blast it out when I need it, and then I go quiet again for a long period, and I'm quite happy just sort of pottering around. Well, me and the wife, talking about new things. This is what we've discovered recently. We're down the line from London, so if you get on the train from the bottom of our road, you're in London by about 45 minutes. And generally, for many, many years, I went from where I was to London and got off and went to the office and did what I need to do. And there was stop after stop after stop that I just whizzed past, never went out there at all. And we started just sort of going up to the next stop and getting off and doing like these little kind of rambles, I suppose, just wandering around. Normally end up in a pub or two to just test it. It'd be wrong not to, Croy, I think. But we're finding that is a good way of actually building these connections. You go into a pub and just you can become who you want to be. You can have these conversations with these complete strangers, but they don't have to sit in your house eating your crisps all night.
No, the interactions for people are different. Some people like you, there's quite a big portion of the population that's like that, is introverted, likes quiet time, needs a little bit of interaction with people, because we all do at some level, but not a ton of it. And then you need to retreat. And that's perfect. And often those are the people that succeed more, because you can be quiet, you can be alone, and there's a lot of strength in being alone. I'm kind of the opposite, almost at the opposite extreme, where I have to be around people, but then that comes with a big challenge, is because if I'm not, I like my quiet time for small portions, so pretty much the opposite of you. But sometimes I'll neglect work because I'll need to be around somebody or need to be on Facebook to have that interaction with people. I'll need to get that adrenaline, those drugs going through my body. So we're all different, and that's the biggest challenge I have is figuring out, How do I stay focused when I have gazillions of ideas and I want to work on different things and I want things always changing? How do I stay focused enough to be able to succeed in one particular thing? Run Across America was really cool, and you think, wow, you've done that, you can do anything. No, that's different. I've run for a couple hours a day for training, and then when I was doing that Run Across America, that was 100 days. That was a time capsule of wildly focused something, a thing. And that was it. And then at the end of that, then I stopped and I went back to regular life, and I actually kind of retreated from life for a while. I didn't go anywhere or anything for several months, and I did just the opposite. So the point is that we need to figure out what's your personality type and figure out how to make what your personality type is work for you, and then how you can work around your idiosyncrasies and your shortcomings in terms of success, whether that's success in business, relationships, health, or whatever.
And everyone can have success, can't they, if they put themselves in the right environment. I'm a big advocate now of find the right environment that seems easy for you, plays to your natural talents, but try to get as good as possible in that. And if it takes 2 or 3 years of you slogging it before you earn nothing, then, as we said, look back at the Beatles. The Beatles didn't earn anything for years, and then when they did earn, they got ripped off, and but they kept on going. I think it is the talent and the environment which is the key part to success, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And there's something that is important to consider too. And I used to think that success was getting married, having kids, having a house with a little picket fence, the so-called American dream. And I used to think that was what was success. And I achieved that without the kids back then when I was very, very young. But it wasn't just a little house. It was a big house. And, I was kind of the king of the town in a sense. And so at least I felt that way. And then I got there and I realized that this isn't success for me. And I learned over the years, and I've discovered that success is defined by what we want to define it as. So for me, Couchsurfing, that for this past 9 months, that's been a huge success to me because it is my authenticity. It's who I love to be, and I love to move around. And now I've been in one place for almost 2 months now. So now it's time for me to travel again. I know that's me. My parents don't get it. Most of my friends don't get it. Only my other nomadic, crazy friends get what I do. But that's success to us. And success to other people is a 9-to-5 job, really safe, money in the bank, savings, being married, watching TV every night, and maybe going to the theater once in a while. Terrific. That's success to that person. Other people's success is being single, never getting married, never wanting to get married, never having kids, and being an entrepreneur and just working from the computer remotely and doing stuff entrepreneurial or whatever. We all have this different definition. So figure out what your definition of success is and live that. And what other people think, and if I could swear, I would, screw them.
Yeah.
I'll keep it clean, but that's literally it. You got to say screw them in a sense. And I don't mean that mean or vindictive. I mean, as your life, you live it the way you want to live it. Because at the end, like Jim Carrey's dad, at the end, he found out that he failed at doing something he didn't love. Now, imagine if he made one decision 30 years earlier to leave a job before he got settled into it and do something else. Totally different person.
Absolutely. In 6 months' time, I would have come up on 4 years of Join Up Dots. And when I started, it was just to create a show. And then I used to have these conversations with other podcasters, and I used to say, I don't care how many people listen as long as one person is affected by it. And I used to think, that's madness. Why do you want to put all that effort in just for one person? And then I kind of thought, well, maybe that's the right way of doing it. Maybe, I should just be focused on that one person. Now, Kroy, global domination. That's what I want. I want global domination. And every single territory across the world, I want them walking around with headphones, tripping over tree stumps as they're listening to Join Up Dots. And the fire inside me, after 4 years of doing this, has just gone up exponentially. And it's really weird. I went through a big slump where I got so tired by it all. I thought, can I push through? But now it's just like throwing paraffin on me and letting me blaze. And so I think my success isn't just, small success. I want the biggest success as possible. Does it frighten me? it did for a while, and I thought to myself, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this. But now I think to myself, I'll roll my sleeves up and let's go and see what we can do. And it's just happening. And I think more of it is about the mental aspect of your personal belief rubs off on people. You know, we've created a show here now, you and me. I'm listening to you talk, you're listening to me talk, and hopefully you're as inspired by me as I was inspired by you. And I was thinking, bloody hell, this feels good. I really like this show. If I come across this, I'd be quite impressed by this, I think. And if you can produce that kind of content time and time again, success is yours to have, isn't it? Because very few people have that ability to create that fire in themselves and blast it out at other people. And people need that. It's the light that shines the way. They can see a path that wasn't available to them before they plugged themselves in.
It's interesting. You're reminding me of, you talked about when you would struggle on Join Up Dots and you went through this phase, and I've struggled through a lot of things in life, and we all have. But when I was running across America, I don't think I've shared this story on one of our previous episodes, but I got to day 21, and that was the day my body shut down, and I had 5 miles left to go that day. And I sat down on the curb and for a few minutes, and I got up and I walked a quarter mile. Then I sat down. My body, physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, everything was done at that moment. So I sat down, but I couldn't give up. So I picked myself up, walked a little bit, sat down, picked myself up, walked a little bit, sat down. And, my crew was right down the road. I could have picked up my phone and said, guys, hey, come get me. But I didn't, because I knew I needed to finish that day, because if I didn't finish that day and I said, guys, come get me, tomorrow it would have been easy to do the same thing and not finish all my miles. And then eventually I'm only running halfway across America instead of all the way. But more importantly, if I would have done that, I would have been giving up on my goal for that day and my goal of running across America, but my dream, which was that time, run across America. But most importantly, if you dig down really, really deep, I would have been giving up on myself. And I've given up on myself many times in the past. You probably have too. Most all of us have at times. But that physical pain and depression I was in a sense, that moment of wanting to stop because everything in my body craved and screamed. Tears were coming down my face. I was hurting so badly. Wanted to stop, but I couldn't. And that went on for weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I was in that kind of pain. And I just pushed through because you have to push through. And if you don't push through, you'll never get there. It's called universal law of resistance. Seth Godin calls it the dip. It's all sorts of things. It's got titles by, but it's this idea that when you want something amazing, like the Beatles, they were in dungy bar after dungy bar, and they were there for years until they finally broke through. I ran for weeks in excruciating pain until I finally broke through. We all have to go through this if we want to achieve something truly amazing. Now, that may be a podcast like you and having hundreds and hundreds of podcasts at this point, or me running across America, or Steve Jobs creating the business, or Jim Carrey in the movie theater, but it could be something very small too. It could be the first time you go to college. I was the first one to graduate from college and still the only one in my family until my kids get there. And it could be for the first time becoming an entrepreneur. It could be the first time getting out of debt. There are a lot of people that are in debt, and to get out of that, it could be whatever it is for you, but you've got to push through and stick with it. And that's what I'm doing now. What I talked about before is figuring out my funnels and all this other stuff, sticking with it until I get it. And now that's my only focus at this point, is how do I figure this out? And how do I stay here behind the computer, driving myself absolutely crazy because it's not my personality, but I need to do it to get it done. And that's where success is going to come. And you'll have more wild, raging, crazy, I can't even put enough definitions on it, success, if you just stick it out long enough when it's boring and it's mundane or you hate it, to get to the point that you can have where you love it.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that totally. And we've already just mentioned him, but let's hear the words. Here's Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Now, what he's saying is, of course, finding that stickability, really, having that faith in yourself, that trust. You could look at God, you could look at intuition or whatever. When did you really realise that you had stickability?
Stickability. I'm not sure. It was something that I've kind of grew up in. We were taught to work. My dad worked like a dog. He worked hours and hours a day and physical, very hard. So I learned great worth ethic as a child. And if anything is to attribute to my success, it's not my intelligence. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm a fairly smart guy, but I'm not the smartest guy by any means. And there are a lot of things I'm not good at all. But I have a really great worth ethic. And if you're willing to work at it long enough, you'll figure it out. And now I'm starting to have a new understanding of life, which it's not just about worth ethic. While that will get you very far, it's also about learning to step into the idea of allowing things to happen for you too. So action is required. A lot of action is required. Massive action is often required, but it's also the idea of to stop resisting what is holding you back. And for a lot of people, that's the resistance is bigger than the drive. And that's where you get stuck and you have to let go of it. So if you're focusing on, I have so many bills, you're going to attract more bills. But if you start focusing instead on how much money you're making or increasing your income, then you'll move beyond that. So you attract what you focus on. And so now it's a combination of those two things, the stickability, as you say, the pushing through, the worth ethic, but now it's also the mindset and the alignment with what you actually want.
And do you think you have to get to that point just before we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self? But do you think you have to get to that point when you actually go, yeah, I've done the work. I now deserve it.
You don't deserve anything.
Yes, you do. You do, don't you? If you put in enough work and enough effort, then you deserve it. I totally think that you do. You deserve, may not the success that you crave for, but if you've been putting in hours and hours and hours and you haven't been getting paid, but you've been getting better and better, I think that you deserve it, sir.
Well, you deserve it in that sense, but you don't deserve anything unless you put in the effort for it. And that includes not just the physical labor for it, but that includes the mindset aspect of it as well. And so that's why I say you don't deserve anything, because if you're not getting the things you want, it means either you're not hustling for it enough or you don't have the right mindset for it and you're blocking it. And that's what I was talking about, being in full alignment.
Yeah.
And I've been studying that a lot lately because I've been out of alignment with a couple of things in my life and I've been struggling with the same things over and over. So why am I still struggling with this, even though I'm trying so damn hard to get away from it? And so I realized that it's the mindset aspect of it is just as important as the hustle part of it.
Well, this is the end of the show. Really, I wanted this to be, a 3-hour epic. I think we could have blazed brightly all the way through, but we've got to bring it to an end. And this is the part that we call the sermon on the mic, when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. But this time, we don't want to go back to the early days. I'd like to send you back to the Kroy that first appeared on the show 700 episodes ago. What is the difference between then and now? So I'm going to play the theme, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
When you're going through life, you're going to succeed and you're going to fail. And that's just a part of it. But you're going to succeed more if you stay focused, get clarity, stay focused, and stay true and congruent to who you are. Because if you're incongruent, you're going to struggle. You're going to go through the same challenges over and over. But get in alignment, figure out what you want first. And that means getting quiet, shutting up once in a while. You have a really big problem with shutting up. Shut up once in a while, get quiet, listen to that inner guidance, that soul, that divine intervention that you can tap into, and then start taking action on that and stick with that until you succeed. Moving around, shifting topic to topic or idea to idea, it's not going to get you anywhere, but to find the thing you love and stick with that one thing and stick with it until you get it and make sure it's something that you truly love to do, and you'll be all right.
Well, I love the fact that you have a trouble shutting up, because it makes you a perfect podcast guest, as you have been today. And for all the listeners out there, Kroy, what's the number one best way that our audience can connect with you?
Well, my name is kind of a unique name, so it's kind of hard to spell. But if you'd like this and you'd like more, you can go to freedreambigbook.com. You can get a digital download of my book for free. So it's Free Dream Big Book. And of course, you can find me on all the social medias and everything else.
And of course, you've got your new podcast out. And I was just looking at it earlier. There's What We Need to Know, Kroys Saver, and Zen Warrior, which is your new one. I didn't realize there was another one. Is that you as well?
Yeah, that was a show that I co-hosted many years ago. That was my first attempt at podcasting radio, whatever you want to call it, and it was okay, I guess. I'd hate to go back to listen to them, but Zen Warrior is my new one. The Zen Warrior podcast is my new one, and it's all about mindset and success and what you need to achieve true fulfillment.
If you like what Kroy has delivered today, please go over and check it out and leave ratings and reviews for him because it's so valuable to get a podcast to the top of the charts. Kroy, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots once more. And please come back again when you have even more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Kroys Saver, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Kroys Saver. So he starts thinking, I'm going to run up to the lamppost, and then he ends up running across America, and the challenges get bigger. But all challenges are kind of in your mind. Physical, yeah, you ache, but it's all mental, where you have to wake up the next morning when no one's looking in your direction and just keep on doing it. And I certainly found that with Join Up Dots. I can't express to you how many times I literally thought, what's the point? No one's listening. Now, I think to myself, blimey, I'm so glad I pushed through. And every single one of you can do it. Just keep on going, keep on going. And if you need help, certainly drop us a line, joinupdots@gmail.com. We always respond to every email, and you can have it. You can have the dream life, but of course it starts with you. See you again. Look after yourself. Cheers. Bye-bye.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.